The phone rang at 2:14 a.m., slicing through the quiet of the house like a blade. For a few stunned seconds, no one moved. It was the kind of call every household secretly rehearses for in the private corners of their imagination. The sound of a nurse's voice in a hurried hospital hallway, the way a hand tightens around an uncertain future, the faint sharpness of antiseptic that feels like a cold warning. In this fictional story, that single call pushed everything into motion. Mark, familiar on television screens, yet deeply private in his real life, was suddenly pulled from the ordinary rhythm of sleep into a crisis he'd never expected. Public figures live in two worlds, the bright one, filled with cameras and ceremonies, and the dimmer one, filled with fear, flesh, and family. Tonight, the dimmer world pushed hard into the spotlight. The ambulance arrived quickly, its lights painting the asphalt in flickering blue. By the time Mark reached St. Mercy Hospital, a plain old building tucked into the aging part of the city, the night staff were already moving with quiet, practiced efficiency. A triage nurse took his vitals with metronome-like calm, whispering clinical words that would later need translation. Fluid around the lungs, irregular heartbeat, fever that wouldn't break. Words like unstable were used carefully, but they landed heavily. Inside the emergency department, time became elastic, stretching, contracting, pulsing like the slow line of a heart monitor. Family and friends began arriving one by one. First a friend, breathless from a rushed drive, then a sibling, eyes tired but alert, and finally a partner, someone who stepped into the waiting room looking suddenly smaller, younger, their defenses shaved away by fear. In the hallway, under unforgiving fluorescent lights, the partner asked questions with a voice trying hard not to shake. The doctor answered with a blunt compassion. "We need to run a CT. There's significant swelling. We're doing everything we can." Hospital rooms turned into tiny theaters filled with humming machines and nurses who moved like guardians of fragile machinery. Tests came first, then waiting, then more decisions. The medical team discovered a complication, a delicate clotting disorder that made normal treatment risky. So they gathered not in a formal meeting room, but in a small huddle, balancing science with moral responsibility. During these moments, memories rewrote themselves in Mark's mind. A childhood game in a suburban yard, his first audition, a late-night conversation with someone he loved. Simple things suddenly felt enormous. Emergencies do that. They fold entire lifetimes into minutes. Beyond the ICU doors, the waiting room transformed into a small community of strangers bound by fear. Messages were typed, deleted, rewritten. A friend updated everyone on the practical details, the right entrance, the right floor,
When
who had been
misinformation
notified.
began rippling through social media, the family issued a calm, measured statement. "We ask for privacy while the medical team works. We will share accurate updates when we have them." Inside the sterile hallway, doctors spoke in clipped but compassionate tones. An attending physician, grayer at the temples, explained the plan: imaging, specialist consults, ICU monitoring. "He's stable for now," he said carefully, and that, for now, became the hinge for the rest of the night. St. Mercy grew into a little world of its own. The ICU with its blinking lights, the family room with its vending machine hum, and the glass doors leading out to an indifferent city. Outside, night workers paused to watch the flashing ambulance lights. Inside, whispered prayers blended with clinical explanations. Soon, a neurologist delivered more difficult news. Imaging showed swelling that could threaten neurological function. Surgery might be needed. The risks were sharp on both sides: intervene too soon or wait too long. The family had to decide. And in that moment, The story turned into a study of trust, consent, and love. They chose surgery. In the operating room, the lights were painfully bright. The surgical team worked with the calm speed of people who knew crisis like muscle memory. Names were spoken to anchor the patient. A nurse whispered reassurances meant more for the family than for Mark. The operation moved forward with guarded optimism. Swelling was relieved, bleeding controlled, but the surgeon spoke plainly when it was over. "We've bought some time. Time, precious and precarious." Morning crept in. The waiting room thinned. Only a few remained, reading every update like scripture. When the surgeon returned, his words were both professional and human. Bleeding controlled, no new damage seen on imaging, but recovery would be slow and unpredictable. The partner exhaled for the first time in what felt like 40 hours. A friend cried quietly, embarrassed by the relief. Life's smallness returned almost instantly. Pets at home, medications to organize, flights to rearrange. The story carried into the long recovery. Days in the ICU, physical therapy evaluations. Strength slowly rebuilt through tiny victories. Speech returned in stuttering phrases and then full sentences. Rehabilitation was hard, painful, but dotted with light. A regained joke, an unsteady walk, a moment of laughter that felt like proof of resurrection. These are the moments that rewrite public narratives. The world expects either a miracle or a tragedy, but real recovery, like real life, is slower, stranger, and far more human than either.